phase of the Indian national movement. We had seen Indian national movement phase 1. We saw Indian national movement phase 2. Now, this particular chapter is the last phase of the Indian national movement, that is phase 3. All right. Now, let's see what all things are there. It's all related to the freedom struggle. Okay. In this phase 3, we will see what things are involved. In phase 2, we had seen Khilafat movement, we had seen Muslim League formation. In phase 2, we have also seen Lucknow Pact, yes, Rowlatt Act. Then we saw non-cooperation movement, that was there in phase 2. After that, after non-cooperation movement, which movement was there? Let me see who remembers.
Civil disobedience movement.
Excellent, excellent. Then we saw civil disobedience movement. Clear? Now we had seen the first phase where the feeling of the developing of the feeling of nationalism. Then we saw all these movements. Now this is the third chapter. Now this will be the final phase of the freedom struggle. Okay. Now, the last phase of freedom struggle. Second World War started in 1939 and ended in 1945. Please make a note of it. Second World War started when? In 1939 and it ended in 1945. Now, I hope you all know Second World War. It was divided into two groups. One was Allied group and one was the Axis group. All right, Allied powers and Axis powers. So it was the Allied powers and the battle between the Allied and the Axis powers. Before I continue further, we will just make a note of it. Which countries were there in the Allied powers and which countries were there in the Axis powers? I want you all to answer me which power had won, whether it was Allied power or whether it was Axis powers. Okay.
The Allied power.
Allied powers. Very good. Okay, so let's see which countries were involved in the Allied powers. Britain was a part of Allied powers, all right, which also included Russia, France, and later the USA. So in Allied powers, there were 4 countries. That means it was Britain was there, Russia was there, France was there, and USA. Okay. So that was the Allied power group. And in Axis power, and these Allied powers were fighting against the Axis powers. In Axis powers, we had countries, Germany, Italy, and Japan. Please underline these Allied powers, underline the countries.
Actually, I have
It's
Adobe reader, so I'm not able to
no
underline.
problem, no problem. I am asking them to underline in their own textbooks. Y'all can underline in your textbooks, children?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, please do that, please. This is very important. Okay, so the last phase of freedom struggle, in that we know, and Britain, since Britain was under Allied powers, what do we see then? If it was if Britain was under Allied powers, India was under the control of the Britain, right? You all know that. Now let's see what role did it play. Japan joined the Second World War against the Britain. Okay, so definitely Japan was also against Britain because it was Axis and Allied powers. The British desperately needed an active cooperation of Indians to check the Japanese advances against the British Empire in India. So this is how the Britishers, took advantage of the Indians during the Second World War. Basically, Japan was also, since we know this fight was between Axis powers and Allied powers, and Japan was in war with Britishers. So what did the Britishers do? They asked the Indians to actively cooperate with them and to check the advances of the Japanese military near the British Empire, which is there in India. So what did they do for this purpose? It sent the Crisp mission to India to resolve the political deadlock. The mission failed because the British were not prepared to transfer any effective power to the Indians during the war. Definitely, see, they wanted the Indians to cooperate with them, to actively participate and support the Britishers against the Japanese. But were they ready to give any power to the Indians? Were they ready to transfer any effective power to the Indians? No. So definitely, because of that, their mission, that is the scripts. Please underline this. This mission of the Britishers had failed. Now we'll see another movement. See, we had seen non-cooperation movement, we saw civil disobedience movement, now we will see Quit India movement. All right. The menacing presence of the Japanese army on the eastern borders of India posed a serious threat to India's security. Okay, the presence of the British in India made India a target for the Japanese attack. See, Japan did not have any thing to do with India, but their enemy was the Britishers. Okay, the enemy was Britain, but these Britishers were there in India, so because of that they were attacking India. All right, and till where they had they had reached the eastern borders. The Japanese army had reached on the eastern borders of India, which was actually a serious threat to other Indian security. Uh, but in reality, they did not have anything to do with India. We were attacked, Indians were attacked just because of the Britishers. The danger could have been averted if the British left the country. That's but obvious. If Britishers were not there in India, would the Japanese army approach towards India? What do you think?
No.
No, they wouldn't have, right? They wouldn't have approached to India because India was nowhere involved in the Second World War. Okay, India was dragged in the Second World War by the Britishers. You all can say that. Okay, addressing the Congress delegates on the night of 8th August 1942, Gandhiji declared, "I therefore want freedom immediately, this very night before dawn, if it can be had." He gave to the people of his country a mantra. What mantra did he give? Do or die. We shall either free India or we shall die in the attempt of freeing India. This is very important. Please underline this, children, and underline this. So Gandhiji was aware about all these situations, how the Japanese army was progressing towards India, and he also understood that India has been targeted just because of the Britishers. If the Britishers were not there in India, the Japanese wouldn't have targeted India. So therefore, on 8th August 1942, what did Gandhiji declared? He declared that now it is very much important that India should free themselves from these Britishers. Only then India will get rid of such attacks from the other countries. The Britishers are creating chaos in India, and therefore he gave a mantra. What mantra did Gandhiji give, children?
Do or die.
Do or die.
Do or die. Okay, please underline this. Do or die. We shall either free India or we shall die in the cause of in this attempt of freeing India. All right, so that's why this movement, okay, was passed. The Congress passed the movement, the Quit India resolution, on 9th August before dawn. Okay, Gandhiji and all other important nationalist leaders were arrested. Congress was banned. Okay, so as soon as the Indians passed this quit India movement, okay, that means they wanted the Britishers to quit India and free India and go away from here. Okay, that was the movement which was started. And what was the reactions of the Britishers for this particular movement which was passed? What did the Britishers do against that?
They arrested
When they
all the
arrested all
nationalist
the
Yes,
leaders and
and banned Congress.
Congress. Okay, they arrested all the nationalist leaders and they banned Congress. All right. You can at least put the cursor so that their children know where we are reading. Okay. Now, the news of these arrests, even before movement began, shocked the nation. Okay, so this news of the leaders getting arrested shocked the entire nation, and definitely now we will see that if everybody is shocked, they'll have some action to it. Yes or no? If Britishers are arresting the leaders, don't you think that the Indians are going to keep quiet or they're going to revert back to it? What do you think?
Ma'am, they will obviously
They
revert
will
back.
obviously revert back. So let's see, what did the Indians do? A spontaneous nationwide movement of protests arose. There were demonstrations, underlined, this is important. There were demonstrations, hartals, processions, okay, leaderless and without any guidelines. Okay, the Quit India movement took different shapes in different parts of the country. Okay, so all over the nation, Okay, in each and every part of the nation, people started protesting against the Britishers for this arrests of the important nationalist leaders. And in what ways did they protest? What did they do?
Ma'am, in form of like hartals, protest.
Demonstrations.
Yes, yes. And it was this, everybody participated in this movement in their own ways. The government came down heavily on people. Now, see, can you see there's just this action reaction going on? Okay. Britishers are arresting, Indians are reacting. Again, the Britishers are trying to pacify the people. How they are doing? They were lathi charged and fired upon. Underline this is important. So you if you will see, it's just like a movie going on. One action then reaction, one action then reaction. If you will imagine in that way, it will become easier for you all to understand and remember. Okay, so you all can even imagine this situation while I'm explaining. Now, because the people started protesting through demonstrations through haldas, the Britishers tried to pacify them through lathi charge. They fired them. The brutality of the police enraged the people. They reacted again violently. So again, instead of they were trying to pacify the people by their own ways, but the people were instead of getting pacified, they were getting more enraged. They were getting more angry, and they were getting more. They became more violent now. So what was the reaction of the people when police had opened fire on them? Police stations, post offices, government buildings were destroyed. Okay. Railway, telegraph, telephone lines were disconnected. This is important. Please underline this. So I'll just brief you quickly how things worked on. Number one, Britishers, Gandhiji started the Quit India movement. Okay, in reaction to that, number two, Britishers arrested the leaders. In reaction to that, number three, people started demonstrations, hartals, and processions. In reaction to that, Britishers opened lathi charge and fired them. Okay. Next, fifth, in reaction to that, what did the people do?
Ma'am, they burned down the police
Burned and
stations and
destroyed all the
destroyed.
government offices, police stations, post offices. They even disconnected the railway and telephone lines. Clear? Can you see action reaction going 1, 2, 3, 4? It's just like a vice versa. Okay. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, before I go on to the next page, I want one student to just revise this so that
Ma'am, can I?
Yeah, yes, Aditya, please go ahead.
Ma'am, the Second World War had started in 1939 and it ended in 1945. Ma'am, Britain was a part of the Allied forces who had won this war. Ma'am, the Allied powers also included Russia, France, and later the USA. Ma'am, they were fighting against the Axis powers that included Germany, Italy, and Japan. Ma'am,
Yes.
Japan joined the Second World War against
Britishers,
British
see,
in
there was a rift between
1942.
Japanese and the Britishers, and because of that, India was under threat, right? And
Yes, ma'am.
therefore, Gandhiji decided that, okay, to avoid this threat, we should make sure that we remove these Britishers only from India.
Britishers.
Otherwise, we will also face problems because of these Britishers. And therefore, Gandhiji started the Quit India movement. Clear?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
On 8th
In this,
August
as soon as
1942.
Gandhiji started Quit India movement, now tell me the sequence of actions taking
Ma'am,
place.
one
Ma'am,
more
can
he
I-
gave a mantra. He gave a mantra of do or die to the Indians.
Okay. No, sequence of action,
Ma'am,
reaction.
can
Acha, all the actions.
Yes, Shreyas.
Ma'am, like after this, now there was a threat to India because now as Japan now like came to the eastern coast of India, and there was only one by only one way the war can be stopped was the British leaving the country. So there was a meeting on 8th August 1942 on in night in which Gandhiji
No,
declared that.
you explain me, Shreyas. I would like to interrupt you. You just explain me. We understood that, okay? That Gandhiji Gandhiji had, they met, they came up, they passed the Quit India movement. After passing Quit India movement, what happened? I want to know that.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, after passing the Quick India movement on 9th August, Gandhiji and all other important nationalists leader were arrested and the Congress was banned, due to which
Hmm.
is the news spread. Like
Hmm.
all the peoples like started protesting, hartals
Hmm.
doing and
Hmm.
processions. And
Hmm.
after this, after the government now became very angry, so they started to do lathi charges and
Hmm.
open firing
Fired
on
upon the
them.
people.
Yes,
Hmm.
ma'am. And then, ma'am, after this, people again started to revolt, in which they destroyed the police station, the government buildings, and they
Hmm.
also cut the railway lines, the
Telephone
telegraph and the
lines.
telephone lines.
Okay, so that was the main, thing where, because Britishers were connecting to their country through these ways, right? Through these mediums. So they had attacked now. Now let's see what happens further. The army was called in to crush the revolt. Over 10,000 people were killed in police and military firing. So definitely, if Indians are, cutting down the telephone lines and railways, and if they are burning government offices, the government is again going to react to it. So this is the sixth point. How did the government reacted to that? They called over 10,000 people, okay, so that in the army, so that they could crush these people, and in that, people were killed in police and military firing. So almost 1,000 people were killed in this firing.
From 10,000.
10,000, yes. 10,000 people were killed in this firing by the police. The movement was savagely crushed within the very short period of time. Okay, so the definitely, now who won this action reaction? Who it was won by whom?
The
Ma'am, the
British.
Ma'am,
British.
the
Britishers.
British.
Why? Because they called in the army from England, and they were able to crush the people easily with the help of the army. All right. So now, the upsurge of 1942 was the last great mass challenge to the British authority. It had shaken the very foundation of the British rule in India. So this action of the Britishers had actually shaken down the foundations of the British rule which was there in India. Now let's see what impact did it had on their rule in India. The impact of this brief, spontaneous, and powerful outburst of nationalist sentiments was tremendous. It sounded like a death knell of the British rule in India. The British realized their days were numbered. Independence was now a matter of time. It demonstrated the great capacity of masses to suffer and die for the cause of freedom. So now see, although the Britishers could, pacify the Indians by calling the armies and by killing almost 10,000 people, but people were very rigid. Now this was the time where, their sentiments, their disappointments, their anger had reached its peak, and people were now ready to die for the cause of freedom. So now, this, somewhere or the other, even the Britishers started realizing this. Okay, they now started realizing that, okay, this is, even it is not the same like how they used to do earlier. The situation now is very different. Even if they will try to, kill people, or n number of people, still you will, definitely they will, they know that it's time for them to, give up. All right. Next is the Indian National Army. Children, I hope you all have understood till here. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
everyone. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The Indian National Army, the
Yes, ma'am.
government had ruthlessly crushed the 1942 movement. Which movement are we talking about over here, children? Which movement are we talking about here?
Quit India
19.
Ma'am,
movement.
what?
Ma'am, the
Quit India.
Quit India movement.
Yes. After that, there was hardly any political activity till the Second World War ended. Okay, so till 1942, the government was successful in crushing the Quit India movement. Until then, till 1945, until the Second World was going on, there was hardly any political activity carried out in India. Nationalist activity, however, surfaced outside India's borders under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose. He believed that the only way India could get her freedom was to drive the British out of India by the use of armed forces. Okay, so this was the belief. So see now, the more the Britishers were trying to, pacify the Indians' actions, they were becoming more and more stronger. Now we come across a name that is Subhash Chandra Bose. Now what was his belief? Under the leadership of Subhash Chandra Bose, the nationalist Indian National Army was formed. Okay, what was his belief? That this is high time. Okay, if that we realize that if we want to get rid away of these Britishers, we also need to be very strong as they are. We also need to have a strong army as the Britishers are having, because it was only through the army the Britishers were able to pacify the Quit India movement. Yes or no? They had
Yes,
killed
ma'am.
10,000 people. This is when Subhash Chandra Bose realized. Please underline this. He believed that the only way to get the Britishers drive the Britishers away from India was the use of armed force, and therefore Subhash Chandra Bose had resigned from the Congress in 1939 and formed a new party called a Forward Bloc. Please underline this. You will definitely get a question based upon this about the Forward Bloc. Yes. So he resigned, Subhash Chandra Bose, he resigned from the Congress, and what did he do? He formed his own new party. What was the name of his party?
Forward block.
Yes, Forward Bloc. Now, he decided to go abroad and to join hands with the enemies of the Britishers and drive the Britishers out of India. So everybody was thinking on their own way, everybody was frustrated with the Britishers and they were trying their own ways to get rid of these Britishers. So one movement was pacified, someone comes with another point. Now, according to him, what did he do? See, this is there in most of the Indian movies also. Dushman ka dushman dost hota hai, right? So definitely the enemies of the Britishers, and India is already having an enmity with the Britishers. So if two enemies join hands together against one particular country, definitely it will become easier for them to achieve their goal, right? This happens
Yes,
in
ma'am.
most of the Bollywood movies as well. So this is what Subhash Chandra Bose did. He went abroad, he joined the hands with the armies against the Britishers so that they could drive away the Britishers from India. Understood till here, everyone?
Ma'am.
Have you all understood? Now, so we know that Subhash Chandra Bose was the one who had formed his own party. Now, what was the objective of this party? You will get a question based upon this. Write down the objectives of the Forward Bloc. So, basic advantages, objectives of these party was: number one, to win freedom from the British without any further delay. Okay, so without any further delay, they wanted to get rid of these Britishers from India. Second objective, to rebuild India after independence on the principles of socialism, that is economic equality, freedom, justice, equitable distribution of wealth. So they were just imagining, free India. Once we get rid of the Britishers, once Britishers will go away, then we will rebuild our India. We will have economic equality, we'll have freedom, we'll have justice, we will have equal distribution of wealth. So imagination of new India. Okay, that is the second objective. Third objective was to promote the world peace. Okay, right? So please mark all these three objectives as important in your textbook so that you might get a question on this. Now, Subhash Chandra Bose was put under house arrest in Calcutta, but he managed to escape in the year 1941. He first went to Russia, then to Germany, and finally to Japan. Now, who was the enemy of the Britishers? Basic enemy. Now we all know.
Ma'am, Germany and Japan.
More than that, Japan. If you
Japan.
remember,
Yes,
Japan had
ma'am.
already approached till the eastern part of India, so he knew that okay, this is the enemy. Now let me join hands with the enemy so that we can crush them internally as well as externally. Internally, that means from the Indians who are there in India, and externally from whom? From Japan. Okay, so basically he was put under house arrest in Calcutta. In the line, that line, Subhash Chandra Bose was under house arrest in dash where, in
In Kolkata.
Calcutta. Okay, now after that he managed to escape from there, and from there he went to Russia, and then he went to Germany, and then he went to Japan. Now in Tokyo, Tokyo is where? Which country?
Japan.
Capital of Japan.
Okay, right. So in Tokyo, that is Japan, he took over the leadership of the Indian independence movement in East Asia from Rash Bihari Bose. Okay, all right. So in Tokyo, what did he do? He took up the leadership of the Indian independence movement. All right. Now, Captain Mohan Singh, a former captain in the British Indian Army, had organized the Azad Hind Fauj, or you can also call it as the Indian National Army. Subhash Chandra Bose became the supreme commander of this Indian National. This entire paragraph is important. Okay, so you know that few Indians were working with the Britishers. Yes, Britishers were forcing Indians to work under in their armies, right? You remember we had studied in the previous
Yes,
chapters.
ma'am.
They were forcing them to travel overseas. They were forcing them to fight with the enemy countries of the Britishers on behalf of the Britishers. So one of them, that is Mohan Singh, was one a former captain in the British Indian Army. All right. So while being in the army, what did he do? He had organized his own army. He has formed his own army, which has two names. So do not confuse yourself. It can either be called as Azad Hind Fauj, or it can be called as Indian National Army. Okay. And what did Subhash Chandra Bose do? He became the supreme commander of this army. Now, can you see they are forming? They are working, in background and forming a army against the Britishers. Now, in the year 1944, how many years away from independence? When did we
Three
got
years.
independence? Hmm?
3 years ago.
Yes. So can you
1944.
see these were the actions, they are forming, how they were preparing for against the Britishers. In 1944, at a meeting in Singapore, Subhash Chandra Bose, known as Netaji, okay, he's also known as Netaji. Please underline Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose took an oath to liberate India. What was his oath? Give me blood, I will give you freedom, he declared. Give me blood means what? What does this sentence literally mean, children? What is he expecting people from the people?
Ma'am,
Ma'am, that
ma'am, maybe
give
to ask people to like give him their dedication or give him their like
Yes, yes. To
ma'am,
the
stand
like
strong.
motivation.
Yes.
if you give me a like support, so
Hmm.
I will guarantee give you the freedom.
Yes. So in supporting while supporting him against the Britishers, there are chances that you might people might be
Yes, ma'am,
executed, or
that
they
you might,
might get killed. So
and that
be
you also
prepared
might
for it.
die.
But I promise you that I am going to give you freedom.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So basically, it means like help me like risk your life, and I will give you
Yes,
freedom.
yes, and that is why he had formed this army, na, Indian National Army. If a person is in the army, then definitely he needs to make sure that his main goal is to achieve freedom, irrespective to his own life. Correct? Now, the primary objective of the Indian National Army was to liberate India through armed struggle. So this was the primary objective, that we want to get rid of the Indians through army. All right. Now, I think it's time up. I'll stop you for
Yes,
today.
ma'am.
We'll continue